From the Green Mountains of central Vermont, this is the Friday News Dump. It's Friday, November 15th, 2013. Your hosts, Greg Crawford and Francis Goodwin, and I'm Deborah Goodwin behind the camera. Here's the latest news.
U.S. stocks rose to records today, with benchmark gauges capping a sixth week of gains. Investors assessed data on factory output amid growing speculation that the Federal Reserve will maintain the pace of its monthly stimulus.
The S&P rose 0.4% to 1.798. The gauge, that went fast. The gauge gained 1.6% this week, capping its longest winning streak since February. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 86.76 points, or 0.6%, to 15,962, an all-time high.
Data today showed manufacturing in the New York region unexpectedly contracted in November. A separate report showed total industrial production in the United States fell 0.1% in October as output at mines and utilities declined. Factory output rose more than forecast. Wholesale inventories widened by 0.4%. In
the most significant legislative rebuke to President Barack Obama's health care overhaul, 39 members of his Democratic Party voted today for a Republican bill in the House of Representatives aimed at undermining his signature domestic policy.
The measure from Republican Representative Fred Upton of Michigan passed 261 to 157. 39 Democrats, nearly a fifth of the party's caucus, supported the measure, which was seen as a test of loyalty.
Which it would appear they failed miserably.
Deborah, go ahead. You
well, isn't this a big kerfluffle over basically a small amount of people? Because I know for a fact that it's the people that had individual health plans that have gotten the cancellation notices, like us, because they're going to wind down the Catamount Blue Cross, and we're supposed to go out and get a new health plan. Just because Obama was taped saying, "Oh, if you like your plan, you can keep it," like they're making this big kerfluffle and hoo-ha out of the whole thing, which only applies to a very small percentage of the American people.
It's called politics.
I know it is. But it's stupid. If they would put half the energy into making the law work and executing it that they do defending it, defunding it, voting 58 million times to repeal it, etc. Maybe they could make it work.
Maybe they could.
That would require the Republicans to actually have any interest whatsoever in governing, and they don't. We'll talk about that another time, I'm sure. But
many Democrats fear the botched rollout of the Affordable Care Act will hurt their re-election prospects in 2014.
The bill is unlikely to pass the Democratic-controlled Senate. The White House said Obama will veto the legislation if it reaches his desk. It says the bill would undermine progress by allowing insurers to sell new substandard plans that do not provide basic services and offer little financial help for catastrophic health events. House Democrats said Upton's bill was designed to sabotage the larger law. You think?
The Obama administration today proposed slashing federal requirements for U.S. biofuel use in 2014. It is partially bowing to pressure from the petroleum industry and attempting to prevent a projected fuel crunch next year.
The Environmental Protection Agency proposed cutting overall use of renewable fuels to a range of 15 billion to 15.5 billion gallons. Biofuel is made mostly from U.S. corn and, to a lesser extent, soybeans, grasses, crop waste, and Brazilian sugarcane.
With that range, the agency proposed a goal of more than 16% less than the previous goal contained in the law that governs the renewable fuel standard. You were going to say?
That the whole ethanol industry is just a subsidy to big agra. Mm-hmm. And, it's not green at all. It takes, they're driving their big tractors around, putting their diesel fuel exhaust into the atmosphere to grow these artificially fertilized soybeans that they turn into ethanol.
It's a net energy loss. It's a complete.
It is. It's a total total subsidy
But
to big agriculture.
it means that all of the subsidies, that the multimillionaire industrial farmers get from the government, will continue to flow into their greedy pockets. So.
Well, the whole farm bill mess is,
ridiculous. It's
ridiculous. But, there's all these big, I'm sure we'll hear more about it in this show or next, but there's all these billionaires making money just collecting their government subsidies to grow the soybeans.
At the same time that they are taking food out of the mouths of poor children.
Right. They're not growing food, which is the whole point of the farm bill legislation. Initially was all about making sure we had a stable and secure food supply,
By the way, the reason that they lowered this biofuel amount is because they only want to put 10% ethanol in the fuel. They got plenty of ethanol. They got all they need. You know what I mean?
Well, plus, when you put ethanol in the fuel, your chainsaw doesn't work or your generator doesn't fire.
Yeah, that's a done deal, but that's why they don't want to take it past 10%.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
The U.S. Supreme Court agreed today that it could herald a dramatic decline in securities class action litigation.
The case will give the justices an opportunity to reappraise a 25-year-old precedent, Basic versus Levinson, that made it easier for securities class action cases to go beyond the preliminary certification stage.
Shareholders led by Erica P. John Fund sued Halliburton Company, saying that the company understated its asbestos liabilities while overstating revenues in its engineering and construction business and the benefits of its merger with Dresser Industries. Halliburton sought Supreme Court review after losing in the lower courts.
That was Dick Cheney's company.
I know he was president of that company before he became...
and what he was trying to do was he was trying to make a quick buck off that asbestos company, figuring he could get out of the asbestos liabilities. That's what this all centers around. It's interesting to me that he came in, he was vice president for 8 years, and now he's been out for 6 years, and this all predated all that. In the 1988 case, the court ruled that investors did not have to prove that their loss could be directly traced to the alleged fraud. Instead, the court held that any misrepresentation about a security would be incorporated into the market price. Any investor who purchased the security at that time could be presumed to have been directly affected by the misrepresentation.
So can we get Dick Cheney on this?
No,
Kind of like
we
Al
can't
Capone,
get him on
We got him on
anything.
tax evasion. We can get Dick Cheney on securities fraud.
No, can't get him on anything. Sorry, babe. In case you hadn't noticed. The dude's a torture and war criminal. We can't get him on anything. Go ahead.
He's evil to the marrow of his bones. Last week, we reported that the death toll in the Philippines from Typhoon Haiyan, possibly the most powerful typhoon in recorded history, could reach as high as 10,000 fatalities. As of early Friday morning local time, the confirmed count had reached 3,621, far surpassing President Aquino's projected maximum of 2,500. It has since gone over 4,000. The UN puts the confirmed death toll at 4,460. Keep in mind that the staggering devastation covers such a vast area and so many roads have been erased that it has been impossible for heavy equipment to reach most regions to remove debris so buried corpses can be retrieved. The number of dead is certain to climb. The American aircraft carrier George Washington is anchored off the eastern coast and is ferrying much-needed supplies to stricken survivors. Navy personnel are assisting in providing makeshift shelters and administering medical attention where necessary. The U.S. has led the world in promising $20 million in immediate recovery aid. China pledged $100,000, but bumped it up to $1 million following a global condemnation of the miserliness of the world's second largest economy.
$1 million is all they cough up?
Oh, they started off with 100,000. They started off with 100,000.
I was going off saying 20 million. That's all we can cough up. These poor people.
Well, that's an immediate aid.
They've been wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Well, this is immediate aid to deal with what they have to do to just get the place cleaned up again, so they can even find all the dead bodies and get people fed and under some sort of temporary shelter. But the The Chinese have a dispute with the Philippines over some island that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but they're just having a pissing contest over who owns the thing. So they said, yeah, we'll give you 100 grand. And then everybody said, you assholes. And they said, okay, $1 million.
Yeah, but then it'll turn out there's $1 trillion worth of
I'm sure it will.
oil underneath that island.
Or who knows, who knows.
Yeah.
But anyway, dedicated fans of Comedy Central's The Colbert Report have promised to exceed China's stingy contribution, and they'll probably do it.
Oh, I like that. The Colbert Report.
Yeah, that's what it says. We're going to do
That's
that.
the name of the show, The Colbert
Colbert
Report.
Report.
At least 13 people were killed and more than 130 wounded today in fighting between militiamen and armed residents of the Libyan capital, Tripoli. The third outbreak of street fighting in 10 days.
The clashes underscored the weak central government's inability to contain the regional militias that helped overthrow Muammar Gaddafi 2 years ago, but kept their guns. Armed disorder has blocked most oil imports for months.
Today's bloodshed, the worst in Tripoli for several months, began when militiamen from the city of Misrata fired into the air and then into hundreds of protesters demanding their eviction from the capital after they fought other groups for control of certain neighborhoods.
Forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad today captured the last of 3 towns on the southeastern approaches of Aleppo, advancing on the city after similar gains around the capital Damascus this week.
Aleppo is Syria's commerce hub and its biggest city before the uprising against Assad erupted in 2011. It has been partly held by Sunni rebels and foreign jihadi fighters for more than a year.
But Assad's army, backed by Shiite Lebanese Hezbollah officers and Iraqi militias, has been regaining territory around Aleppo and Damascus to the south, strengthening the president's hand ahead of proposed but long-delayed peace talks in Geneva.
Kim Jong-un is proving to be even more sadistic than his father, and that's saying something. Getting reliable information out of that cesspool that is North Korea is problematic, to say the least. But it is reported that as many as 80 people were publicly executed in locations around the country. There have been first-hand accounts of thousands being herded into stadiums and forced to witness people tied to posts being literally torn to pieces by machine gun fire. Their crimes? Owning a Bible, or watching smuggled DVDs of South Korean television shows and other minor transgressions that displease the evil little monster that runs that pitiful country. I wonder what Dennis Rodman thinks of his little buddy now. Oh, wait, that's right. The worm doesn't do the think thing.
Ugh.
I get the impression you don't like him.
Not even a
I
little
don't
bit.
know where I get that. Must be the spin, yeah. A gunman killed 8 people Saturday in a bar in the Colombian city of Cali.
5 members of the Nigerian Islamist group Boko Haram and 2 Nigerian army soldiers were killed Saturday in fighting in the city of Kano.
2 people killed and 5 others were injured Tuesday in a bomb explosion in Bedfordview, South Africa, near the Eastgate shopping mall.
4 Palestinians were killed in a bombing attack on Wednesday at the Yarmouk refugee camp.
Syrian Kurds Wednesday announced transitional autonomous authority amidst fighting with rebels.
Bomb explosions across Iraq Wednesday killed 18 people.
39 people were killed in Iraq yesterday in attacks against Shiite Muslims.
Israel on Wednesday canceled proposed plans to build the new settlements in the West Bank after U.S. and Palestinian opposition. That's interesting that they even considered not doing it, but probably a good sign. We shall see.
I was just going to say about the other 2 stories. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, right. A French priest was kidnapped yesterday in Cameroon, near the border with Nigeria.
A general strike in Nepal protesting next week's scheduled elections shut down schools, markets, and industries on Monday.
U.S. stock exchanges Tuesday jointly announced a plan to improve the technical functioning of their markets in the face of recent high-profile glitches, such as the trading halt in NASDAQ in August.
Poppy farmers in Afghanistan on Wednesday reported record yields for their opium crops. Oh boy.
Starbucks was ordered to pay Kraft Foods $2.76 billion in damages over a dispute about packaged coffee. I wonder what that was about. I should know.
Packaged coffee, apparently.
Indeed.
Yeah.
That's why the Starbucks coffee sucks, because it's really made by Kraft.
Oh, I
No,
don't
come
think
on.
so. No, Starbucks is actually pretty good
It's
coffee.
just kind of watery, you know.
I don't
think.
like
Depends on
Starbucks
the grind you get. You know, I
Personally,
like.
I'm not a fan of the Starbucks coffee, I gotta say.
Well, I like
Sniff,
you know
sniff.
dark roast. Like I like my coffee chewy.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right, and on that, we're going to take a break. We're going to go to Gregory Crawford's weekly rant where he gets all over the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the so-called trade agreement, or a potential trade agreement. And then we'll be right back after that. So stick around and join us.
Hi, I'm Greg Crawford with the Friday News Dump, brought to you by World News Trust. There once was a third-string actor whose last entertainment gig was the host of Death Valley Days, a weekly western brought to you by a laundry detergent called 20 Mule Team Borax. He preferred that people call him the Gipper, the nickname of a football player he had once portrayed. I always kind of liked Ronzo, but that would have reminded him of a role he'd rather forget in a clinker of a comedy called Bedtime for Bonzo, in which he was upstaged by a chimpanzee. That movie was prophetic in a sense, in that this guy would regularly fall asleep in meetings after gorging on jelly beans, so it was bedtime for Ronzo. Anyway, this guy began stepping out on his wife, actress Jane Wyman, with an unknown MGM contract player named Nancy Davis. Long story short, he divorced Wyman and married Nancy. Now, Nancy had higher aspirations than women were permitted to achieve back in the day. She couldn't be president, but she could marry one. Or at least marry some third-string actor who could play one. And the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, we're talking about Ronald Reagan. Okay. Why? Ha! Thought you'd never ask. The right-wing insanity that has brought us to the brink of total annihilation had its rebirth under the guiding hand of the great communicator. There have always been right-wing nutjobs muttering dire imprecations about the end of the world, but they were keeping their heads down following World War II. The unholy trio of Mussolini and Hitler and Tojo kind of gave the right-wing politics a bad name for a while. Of course, that didn't stop madmen like Joe McCarthy and his communist witch hunt conducted under the guise of the House Un-American Activities Committee. Celebrities like Charles Lindbergh, poets like Ezra Pound, and bankers like Prescott Bush, yeah, W's grandpappy, and plenty of others all thought that old Adolf was a swell guy. But when it became obvious that they'd bet on the wrong horse, they backpedaled like ducks headed for a waterfall. And though the hero of World War II, Dwight D. Eisenhower, was our Republican president for 8 years, he had zero tolerance for extreme right-wing shenanigans. Pretty much everybody liked Ike, and everybody prospered during the 50s. Pretty much. On the eve of his departure from the White House, Ike warned us of letting the military-industrial complex gain too much control over our political system. Oh, Ike, if only we had listened. But President Eisenhower wasn't the first to issue such a prescient alarm. This is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. "I hope we shall crush in its birth the aristocracy of our moneyed corporations, which dare already to challenge our government to a trial and bid defiance to the laws of our country." I don't think Jefferson would have had too much use for the Tea Party trolls that so love to invoke his name when trying to justify their idiotic schemes. He also said, "I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies." You think it was bad then, Tommy? Just be glad you're not around now. But the goldfish syndrome reigned supreme in the good old US of A. People forget. And it wasn't long before the crazy pants crowd started crawling out from under their rocks again. John Birch and his band of merry whack jobs with their "Impeach Earl Warren" bumper stickers, and Ayn Rand with her bumper sticker philosophy of objectivism, all contributed to a resurgence of the pathological selfishness that is the cornerstone of rapacious corporatism. And rapacious corporatism is the cornerstone of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, an ultra-secret free trade agreement that really has little to do with trade, but a great deal to do with circumventing and subverting the sovereignty of the nations of the world for the benefit of multinational corporations and to the detriment of the citizens of those nations. It has been called NAFTA on steroids, but I'd say treason on steroids might be more appropriate. And Mr. Obama wants Congress to give him the green light to fast-track this gang rape of America's regulatory authority over the psychopaths that run multinational corporations and Wall Street. The term ultra-secret means just what it says. Not even the members of Congress on the committees that normally deal with trade issues know what the industry representatives and lobbyists have been up to. Very little information is available about the details of the TPP, but enough has been ferreted out that in just the past couple of days, WikiLeaks has been able to release information that is making everybody sit up and take notice. Finally. I started a petition on MoveOn about a year ago to warn people about the malevolence of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now that more people have caught up, maybe something will happen. Several websites have sprung up, like flushthetTP.com, from which I've gleaned the following information. Kindly contain your screams of outrage until I have finished. The TPP will allow corporations to sue any state that tries to enact food safety regulations, like requiring products containing GMOs to be so labeled, or laws protecting family farms by forbidding them as barriers to trade that might adversely affect future profits. Monsanto has already spent millions to defeat such bills in California and Washington, and threatened to sue Vermont if they considered such legislation. The TPP lets corporations sue countries for lost profits due to labor laws. Any labor laws. It will also do away with what few impediments remain to outsourcing jobs to the third world countries that have few, if any, laws protecting workers. Remember the thousands of deaths in Bangladesh? The TPP will also create international trade tribunals with the power to override any and all national laws that might impact future profits. NAFTA has already done away with environmental and consumer protection laws, and so has the World Trade Organization. Thanks to the WTO, it is illegal for any country or state to require labeling that tells consumers what country the meat they feed their children came from, or even if it's meat at all. Under this provision, BP would have gotten off scot-free and not had to pay a dime in fines or restitution. The tribunal judges would all be corporate lawyers, and their decisions could not be appealed in any court. According to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the TPP would impose copyright laws that will strip Internet users of any right to privacy or free speech, and restrict access to knowledge and culture, and could even undermine the very purpose of enabling, promoting any innovation and creativity. Congress cannot change them, and all nations will be forced to comply with TPP edicts. Big Pharma will be granted patents in perpetuity, assuring high prescription prices. Anything and everything, including medical procedures, can be patented, which would overturn recent court decisions, and arbitrary restrictions on access to medical equipment, diagnostic techniques, and procedures can be as capricious as the corporations desire. Any and all regulation of the financial shenanigans of Wall Street will be rendered null and void, and no transaction taxes or any other barriers to trade will be permitted. Even if they want to take a home that's already paid for, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So, do I have your attention now? As I said earlier, President Obama wants Congress to give him fast-track authority to negotiate and sign this abortion with zero input from us, our representatives, or our senators. And we will have absolutely no legal recourse. I, for one, am ashamed that I ever supported that man. It is no exaggeration to say that the fate of the world depends on you and everyone you know screaming bloody murder at your representatives and senators and demanding that they reject this utterly malignant treachery without reservation or suffer the consequences at the ballot box. We will update you as more information becomes available. Now you know. Now you must act.
And we're back. I'm Francis Goodwin. This is Greg Crawford. Behind the camera, we have Deborah Goodwin. This is the Friday News Dump for, Friday, November 15th, 2013. Thanks for sticking around or coming back. At least 4 people were killed and 8 injured Monday after a 7-story building caught fire in Vikhroli, a suburb of the Indian city of Mumbai.
At least 100 people were killed on Monday in a tropical cyclone in Somalia's semi-autonomous Puntland region.
4 members of the U.S. Marine Corps were killed Wednesday when ordnance accidentally exploded after a training exercise at Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton in South Carolina. Excuse
Southern
me,
California.
Southern California, yeah.
Actually, my son was stationed there when he was a Marine, and what those guys were doing is probably the most dangerous job in the military, is collecting unexploded ordnance in
Oh,
practice
God, what an
fields.
I can
awful-
imagine, yeah.
So-
That was like that Hurt Locker movie. It was all about
that-
those dudes that were trying to.
Well, they were
But they were in
disarming
Iraq.
IEDs, the improvised explosive devices. This is unexploded shells
Oh,
and
I see.
bombs and that sort of thing
Different,
that they have to collect from the practice ranges, and there's lots of them out there. Not to mention mines and God only knows what else. So it's not a pleasant job, I'm sure.
Ugh.
At least 5 people were killed and 10 injured after 4 coaches of the Mangala Lakshadweep Express derailed near the Indian city of Nashik in Maharashtra state.
Nice try.
You do this
Nice
to me
try.
on purpose. You do this to me on purpose.
I definitely do. Two people
You faked that really good.
Two people died following a plane crash today near the runway at Airbus facilities in Broughton, Wales.
Protests were held in Albania yesterday against the proposal to bring Syria's chemical weapons stockpile to be destroyed in that country.
Really, I wouldn't want it, would you? No, absolutely not.
Police in Ethiopia arrested dozens of people today outside the Saudi Arabian embassy in the capital Addis Ababa. They were protesting against attacks on Ethiopians in Saudi Arabia.
Authorities in Bangladesh arrested 5 leaders of the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party on Saturday, the day before the scheduled start of a nationwide strike.
The Greek Coast Guard Sunday intercepted a Sierra Leone flagged cargo ship with around 20,000 Kalashnikov assault rifles on board. The ship's Turkish captain and 7 crew members were arrested.
3 members of the Iranian rock band, the Yellow Dogs, were shot and killed on
No.
Monday in Brooklyn, New York, by a member of a different band. The shooter then committed suicide.
I had heard that the guy had been in the band and they kicked him out, and that's part of why he was angry, but I don't know. That might have been her.
I don't know.
At first, I thought it was they were
Actually,
executed like the people in
No.
in North Korea.
The
for
band
being a
was,
rock
the band was
band from
actually
Iran.
pretty good. The band was actually pretty good.
Oh
And
dear.
they were starting to get, some airplay and that sort of thing. And whether it was a competition or some sort of ideological issue, who knows?
I don't know. Hawaii Tuesday became the 15th state in the United States to legalize same-sex marriage.
How many gay people are going to go to Hawaii now to get married?
Just
It's like the best.
Oh, yeah,
it's
right.
like, why didn't they do this, 10 years ago just for the tourism industry,
I want to go to Hawaii.
I want to go to Hawaii, baby.
A U.S. District Court judge Tuesday denied a motion by former New Jersey Governor John Corzine, the former CEO of MF Global, to dismiss investor litigation intended to hold him accountable for MF Global's blow-up in October 2011.
He
these
lost
guys.
like $10 billion of investor
I know.
funds, and he said, "You should no. Tell them to go home."
He was
I
an
don't think so.
He was an Obama backer. So
Well,
These
whatever.
guys are just so sneaky. They just lay low for a little bit, and then they hope that we don't pay attention, and then they make these motions in front of the court. They get their lawyers in there, and the fix is in.
I was reading a story today about some guy that's spending his entire life in prison for shoplifting a jacket worth $150.
Right, and John Corzine is running around
Right.
scot-free.
Yeah,
and
he's chauffeured everywhere and God knows what.
It just makes your head go.
Canadian police revealed yesterday that 348 people have been arrested internationally and 386 children rescued as a result of a 3-year child pornography investigation called Project Spade.
Spade.
Yeah, whatever.
Terrible.
Prosecutors in the Australian state of Queensland dropped manslaughter charges today against American surgeon Jayant Patel, who pleaded guilty to charges of fraud.
The Senate of Thailand Tuesday rejected an asylum bill that could have seen the return of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra.
Shinawatra. I think that's the way that one goes. The U.S. State Department on Wednesday designated the Nigerian Islamist group Boko Haram as a terrorist group. You finally got around to that, huh, guys? All right.
China, Russia,
Your government at work.
China, Russia, Cuba, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and Algeria were elected Wednesday to the United Nations Human Rights Council.
WikiLeaks on Wednesday published a secret draft chapter of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
That should be good. 2 U.S. Secret Service agents were relieved of duty from President Obama's security detail yesterday after charges of sexual harassment toward a female subordinate.
Chinese officials said today the government will relax some elements of its one-child policy and will end its so-called re-education through labor camps.
Yeah, I heard about that. You know, now where's everybody going to get their adopted babies from?
Oh, God.
No, but
Well,
seriously,
getting rid of
was-
the labor camps is a good idea, but
Yeah, no, the
everybody
labor
says,
camps
oh,
is
it was
good."
so draconian for them to say only one child. And they said, wait a second, there's 1.6 billion people in that
Yeah.
country. I really don't think you can call it draconian. Try common sense instead.
Right, this is the-
to keep things down. But they also have a society where the elderly are traditionally cared for by the family rather than being packed into elderly, homes and that sort of thing.
Right.
So it was a little bit more difficult for single child to be able to take care of both parents. So
Right.
it's the law of unintended consequences might have been a factor there.
I mean, it went on and on. Then, like, if the child was female, they would go out back and bury it because they could, they didn't want to have a female kid. Well, you know what I'm saying. It's an
true.
awful situation, definitely, all the way around.
But the story I heard about it today was saying that people aren't really all that excited about being able to have 2 kids now because they can't afford the one they got,
Well, it
and-
depends. Just as there is a horrific difference in income distribution in this country, it's even worse
terrible
in
in
China.
China.
There are billionaires in Shanghai, and there are people in the rural areas that live on, $2 a month. So, but they still all have to pay the same price for commodities that they require just to stay alive. Go figure.
Burma today announced the release of 69 political prisoners in ongoing reform.
Venezuelan television presenter Maria Gabriela Eisler was crowned Miss Universe of 2013, on Saturday in Moscow.
Brazilian, is it?
Yes.
I'm sure she's gorgeous.
Probably
Kind of cute. She's okay.
Brazilian. British composer John Taverner died Tuesday at the age of 69.
Francis Bacon's painting of his friend Lucian Freud, 3 Studies of Lucian Freud from 1969, was sold on Wednesday for, hold on to your seats, ladies and gentlemen, $142.4 million. And it didn't even really look like Freud. Whatever.
A 14.8 carat orange diamond was set a world record after it was sold Wednesday at a Christie's auction in Geneva for $35.5 million.
Okay, guys, this story is a real bummer. Researchers have invented a robotic rear end. No, not for that. Dr. Benjamin Loke and Carla Pugh created a plastic posterior to train newbie doctors in the delicate art of the prostate exam. You can't make this stuff up. The electronic tushy is attached to a computer monitor with a virtual victim named Patrick, who's bent over an examination table. Sensors in the
But it's
device.
just the butt part that's bent over.
Yes. Well, you see his shoulders on the screen, and the butt is right there, just smiling at you. Anyway, sensors in the device can elicit animated responses to the student doctor's probing questions. No, really, it also guides the intern in appropriate bedside manner.
Oh.
The polystyrene
No.
prostate's shape and size mimics what he, or God help us, she might encounter when sticking a digit where the sun don't shine, which raises the question, what did they practice on before Patrick came along?
They
Each
practiced
other?
on people.
I shudder to think.
People. It's people. They practiced on people. But I'm sure they have the corresponding female, pelvic exam and pap smear, robotic device.
Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but
One World Trade Center became the tallest building in the United States Wednesday.
And Rahm Emanuel said, "No, it isn't. No, it isn't. That's an antenna is an antenna." So
It was an interesting debate, actually, because is the spire an antenna or is it a spire that's part of the whole building? You know, and it was this symbolic 1776,
right.
which was so hokey, if you ask me. And, you know, all I'm amazed at is that they finally got the thing up, because it was just such a tragedy of political.
carrying it up all those stairs must have been a
12
bitch, huh?
years.
Yeah.
Right, 12 years.
But
and
don't you guys have anything better to do with your time? Come on, and argue about whether it's the tallest building taller than the Hancock Building. Come on.
It's not called
whichever
the
one. It's not the Hancock
I
Building.
understand
the
it's
Sears Tower.
It was the
That's
Sears
not
Tower
the
that
Sears
is
Tower
now
anymore.
the
Willis
Willis
Tower.
Tower.
It's 40% unoccupied, and
The Sears Tower?
No,
Or
the new
Freedom,
World
the
Trade Center.
Freedom Tower?
And
The
guess
Freedom
the tenants are all government agencies that all committed. They promised, you know, it was a commitment to help get the thing up for financing.
Yeah, well, I
Do you
wouldn't
want-
want
I
to move
was
into
just
it.
saying, I'm gonna put a parachute shop down the basement.
No, you ought to put it on the top floor.
Actually. Oh,
Okay.
dear,
Yeah,
that's not even
all
funny.
seriousness aside now, ladies and gentlemen. Satellite imagery has revealed ancient impact craters all over the Earth, and apparently there's one at the bottom of Chesapeake Bay. Scientists said, "Hey, let's drill a hole in that sucker and see what we find." So they did.
Funny. the way you
And
put
they
that.
found water trapped in the sediment that was estimated to be between 100 and 145 million years old and had twice the salinity of today's seawater.
Wait, it came in on a meteor?
No.
It was trapped in a meteor and then it sunk
No,
to
it
the
was
bottom
it
of
was
Chesapeake
it was
Bay?
it was trapped in the sediment below the bottom of the bay,
I see.
and it was probably driven into the sediment
I
by the
see.
impact of whatever fell out of the
They should be able
sky.
to learn a lot of stuff from that.
So we'll see. You know, I'm sure that in another, 100 million years or so, they'll figure out what to do with that information. Ming the clam is dead. But he, she, or it had a nice long life. 507 years to be exact, which means that Ming, who was born in 1499 at the height of the Ming Dynasty, or any quahog clam of similar size actually, is the longest-lived multicellular animal like ever. Show of hands for who gives a bleep.
I do.
Isn't
Because
science fun?
how big was it?
Yeah.
That's all?
Yeah.
How did they know
How did they know how old it is? They have clam
Well,
rings,
the little
like
clam
tree
rings,
rings.
I guess so. I guess it's something like that. But they had to kill it, to find out how old it was, I guess. But whatever.
It probably croaked.
They probably put
No,
it.
they
They
killed
probably put it in some chowder
Yeah.
because it's not. It wouldn't be good on the half shell
No,
at
no.
that age.
No. Well, actually, they're probably something close to that age before they're even large enough to be legally caught. 'Cause
Really? How old
There
are
are limits. Clams take a long time to get to a legal size. I mean, a lobster, for instance, to get to legal size, measured from the back of the eye socket to the end of the carapace, takes like 7 years.
That's
8
a
years.
lobster.
That's a
a
lobster.
lobster.
But the point being that
How do you know this?
there is a measurement. There is a measurement
I'm sure.
for clams for
I'm
this
sure.
kind of stuff.
I'm sure there's a certain amount of bigness they have to be before you can harvest
I
it.
had a clam permit years ago when I lived in.
You know, we were just talking about this. How you know everything.
Oh.
Go ahead. Tad also knows everything, but
I'm more reticent.
we know different everythings.
I guess.
Anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch.
That was one big clam.
Thanks, folks. The U.S. Navy christened the USS Gerald R. Ford Saturday. The $15.5 billion aircraft carrier is the most technologically advanced ship ever built. You know what's interesting about aircraft carriers?
What?
Is they're not that hard to sink anymore. It's really ridiculous
Well,
because
they've got to be like totally automated and totally.
and so
all they
they're
do is
more
take out
like
their computers.
what they are is we're like nah, we dare you to attack us, because really they're very vulnerable, especially with these supersonic cruise missiles and whatnot. It's just interesting we're even still building them. They're almost symbolic.
They're
in a
weird
sense. Yeah,
things to deploy upon the oceans.
Yeah,
You know.
and they're very
Well, they're
vulnerable.
floating cities. I mean, there
Yeah,
are like
yeah.
30,000 people on one of those bloody
Right.
things.
Yeah, but
so.
one guy in a rowboat, I mean.
Well, that's what
All right,
happened
now let's
in
not
Yemen.
talk about that because
Well, I know, but I'm
NSA
just
is
saying
going to get us.
But they're
But-
vulnerable. It's interesting they're still building. Yeah.
Summer's approaching in Antarctica, and things are warming up, relatively speaking. That spells bad news for the Pine Island Glacier, affectionately known as Pig. In 2011, aerial photos revealed a ginormous crack across the width of the Antarctica's fastest moving glacier, again, relatively speaking. And now the glacier has calved, and that's really the word scientists use, a seriously ginormous iceberg. If it were a landmass, it could conceivably be home to 10 million people because it is bigger than Manhattan. It will take a while to float free of Pine Island Bay, but it could pose a serious threat to shipping lanes in the Southern Ocean if currents send it in a westerly direction. Hell, it'll pose a threat no matter where it goes. The damn thing's huge. Like each of Martin Scorsese's eyebrows, this thing deserves a name.
What? Martin.
Well, it's the size of Manhattan, and you know, when you think of Manhattan, I mean, who's the king of Manhattan? That's Martin Scorsese. So his eyebrows.
I get it.
Okay,
I get it.
it's an obscure connection,
okay,
but
okay. Got it.
whatever.
Scientists said Wednesday they've discovered Panthera blythea in Tibet, the oldest big cat fossil ever unearthed.
Pantera.
The WWF released a photo Wednesday taken by a camera trap in a forest in central Vietnam. And,
Oh, it's still alive?
oh yeah, one of the Earth's rarest mammals, the Ceola, which hadn't been seen in 15 years.
Scary. Too bad we don't have that picture to put up.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, I'll get it.
The
Put it up on
annual
the World
landed
News
meteor
Trust site.
shower can be seen this weekend, November 16th through the 18th. And though weather conditions in the Northeast appear favorable for viewing the shooting stars emanating from the constellation Leo, however, a full moon will diminish the visibility of all but the brightest bits of rock and dust incinerating in a flash of light as they enter the atmosphere. If you go outside to view the shower, dress warmly and give your eyes time to adjust to the darkness. Try to situate yourself as far from ambient light sources as possible, such as street lights and illuminated homes. Recent events such as the Chelyabinsk, Russia meteor explosion have made people justifiably nervous about rocks falling out of the sky at 40,000 miles an hour. But annual events like the Perseids or Leonid meteor showers are typically lingering dust and debris from the tails of ancient comets that Earth passes through periodically as it circles the sun. There's never anything big enough to reach the Earth and cause damage. Well, almost never. As long as you're craning your neck to look up at the night sky, keep an eye out for the comet Ison, which is brightening rapidly and can now be seen with the naked eye. An hour before dawn on Monday is said to be the best time to spot it low in the east-southeast sky around 5 a.m. on November 18th. 10 days later, it will pass so close to the sun that it may not survive the encounter. Farewell, Comet Ison. We hardly knew ye.
I love these science stories.
Yeah, definitely. I like the science stories and the health stories, definitely.
Yes.
And on that note, we're going to tie it up for this week, Friday, November 15th, 2013. I'm Francis Goodwin. This is Greg Crawford. Behind the camera, we have the lovely Deborah Goodwin. See ya.
Good night.
Join us next week.